Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. It has been a long while since I posted here on YouTube, so I'm back with a little bit of a list build for you, a gentle coming back of doing some more content for you guys. And I'm back in the house office at the moment because the studio is still getting done. Hasn't been done yet. Anyway, we're going to be talking about the Starshatter Arsenal today. I'm going to be making a 2,000 point list. It's just my list. This is what I've used a couple of times. I haven't had much gaming over Christmas and in this January period. So yeah, you'll have to let me know in the comments down below what you think about my list and what you would do to change it. Now before we get into the list, a little word about our sponsors. Guys, do you need dice? If you do, get on over to the Baron of Dice website. Link will be down in the description down below. Use my promo code PLANET40k to get a 5% discount. They've got custom dice, all sorts of Necron dice if you're after Necron dice, but all the other factions are there, as well as other gaming dice if you're interested. So head on over to the Baron of Dice, link down below. Okay, Starshatter Arsenal, 2,000 points. Now we obviously got this over the Christmas period, and the detachment rule is Relentless Onslaught. So basically, all units are going to have a +1 to hit against enemy units that are on objectives. And if you're using a vehicle or mounted unit, you're going to get the assault keyword, which means you can advance and still fire, although you won't be able to charge. So that's the ability, or the detachment rule, for units within this detachment. Right, let's kick this on then. Let's get straight into the warlord of this detachment. We're going to start this off with the Catacomb Command Barge. Now it is a toss-up in this attachment when you go with Command Barge or you go with the Silent King. I prefer the Command Barge. The Silent King does have its benefits, but I'm going to go in this route for this video. Now the Command Barge is going to have a Tesla cannon. I always go Tesla. Maybe it's because I play demons a lot, I don't know. But I go with Tesla cannons, Overlord's Blade as well, just for a bit of melee output. And I'm going to be adding the enhancement, of course, which is the Dread Majesty. And that's a 30 point enhancement, and any Necron units within 6 inches of your barge get to reroll hit rolls of a 1 and get to reroll wound rolls of a 1. That's a pretty powerful enhancement. It basically makes him a discounted Silent King if you were to select that Triarch ability with the Silent King, which I always do. Some of you don't, some of you prefer the ignore modifiers one. I prefer the rerolls of 1s to hit and 1s to wound. So yeah, he's fairly cheap, even with the enhancement. What is he coming out at? 150 points. Fairly tough, fairly tanky for what he's got. Quantum shielding, well, advanced quantum shielding with also with the 4+ invulnerable save on top. And he's adding OC. So I think it's a decent option if you go down this path with this kind of list. Now while I'm on the subject of the Command Barge, I thought I'd throw in what we would do with some stratagems. I picked a unit for every stratagem, so I may as well do this as I go through the list. With the Endless Servitude stratagem, which is the 1 TP stratagem at the end of the fight phase, you can basically use reanimation protocols. I think this would be an ideal target within my list for this stratagem, because he will get, well, maybe your opponent goes for your Command Barge because it's applying a lot of buffs. So getting a reanimation protocols at the end of the fight phase, potentially it's the end of your opponent's fight phase, and then your turn's about to come, you get to do reanimation protocols again in your command phase. So it's like having double bubble. If you had a reanimator, that would be even better, I suppose. Okay, next character within this list is the Hexmark Destroyer, my MVP of, well, 10th edition for Necrons really. I don't leave home without Hexmark Destroyers. Now unfortunately there's only one in this list. I really wanted more, but you kind of can't have everything in the Starshatter list. It doesn't quite work. Now, the Tomb Blades may be quicker at doing the secondary objective, things like that. They can zap into the areas and do stuff, but Tomb Blades can't advance into the space and then do the action, such as establish locus perhaps. Whereas a Hexmark Destroyer, as long as you've got a 9-inch bubble, you can pop in and still do the action, not a problem. They're of course slightly better in the Hypercrypt Legion, but this isn't the Hypercrypt Legion list today. We're doing the Starshatter Arsenal. Now I think lone op is a huge advantage for units, so that's one of the main reasons why I take a Hexmark Destroyer. Also, if you go anywhere near him, he's going to get a free Overwatch, which can do a little bit of work. I know it's not a massive, it's just 6 pistols at the end of the day, but it does a little bit of work. But yeah, for your secondary scoring behind enemy lines, established locus and so on, it's a really good option to have in your arsenal. Literally. The third character within this character's category, I suppose, is Necrons Stormlord. I was reluctant to put him in, but I think you need him in. You need him in. He's not going to be doing much in the game apart from CP farming, and as you guys may have already seen with the stratagems, some of them are quite pricey and a lot of them are very usable. So you're going to be quite CP reliant because the stratagems are going to be used quite often. So you're going to need that CP farm with Imitate the Stormlord. Now he's of course got his torrent, which is quite a rare thing to have for Necrons. There's a couple of other torrents around, but not many. So you could use it for Overwatch, maybe against the smaller stuff. He's also got his staff as well, which is decent enough. But really, he's not going to be doing much other than CP farming for our stratagems for other units to take advantage of. We've got the fourth character within this list is a Locust Lord. Obviously, it's a mounted unit, and I have included the enhancement, how do I say this, Chrono Impedance Fields. I believe that's how you say it. So that basically is a -1 to damage for his unit, or a unit within 6, but likely will be his own unit. I'll let you know later in the video what unit he'll be leading. There's only 2 options, Locust Heavies or Locust Destroyers. Find out later on in this list. Now he's 80 points, the enhancement's 25 points. He's going to be taking the Overlord's Blade just for a bit of melee output and the Resurrection Orb to help his unit, I suppose. So with the Resurrection Orb alongside the enhancement, that makes the unit quite durable. But the main reason for him is his ability, which gives 5+ critical hit rolls on those lethal weapons. So those Gauss weapons that have the lethal ability, 5+ rolls basically mean you don't need to roll to wound. So 1/3 of your dice, that's quite a good chunk. And yeah, we'll see later on who he will be leading. And then the fifth and final character within this list is a Technomancer, the forgotten one, but the dependable one. I really like Technomancers, the 5+ Funo pain save for his unit. He's also a healer, so he can heal D3 in your movement phase. That's after reanimations happened already in your command phase. Again, we'll find out later on in this video which unit the Technomancer will be leading. So that's the 5 characters within this list. I think 5 is an okay number. It does open the door for your opponent to go for assassination, potentially, but I'm okay with 5. Necrons in general are quite character heavy. Okay, next on the list is the Canoptic Spider. Gone with the 2 particle beamers, as you would, why wouldn't you? And then you take the Gloom Prism and the Fabricated Claw away. Now, I'm not massive on spiders anymore, to be honest, especially when you're not bringing Canoptic Scarabs, which, spoiler alert, I don't have any Scarabs within this list. However, there's going to be plenty of vehicles within this list, so you're going to get the 6+ Funo pain save with that Fabricated Claw array. Also, the Gloom Prism is going to be handy for a 5+ Funo pain save against mortal wounds. Maybe there's explosions, maybe there's psychic attacks, and your opponent's got loads of other ways of bringing mortal wounds to the table. Now let's not forget this is also a vehicle in itself, so he's going to be it's going to be using its own Funo pain save. It's also going to interact with the detachment rules, so it will be able to advance and still fire those particle beamers, which are pretty decent, and the spider in general can shoot and fight reasonably well for its points cost of only 75 points. Normally when I take spiders, they tend to go down early, but somebody pointed this out in the Discord, in the council, that you've got plenty of other big and badder, scarier things within the Starshatter arsenal for your opponent to worry about. So they're not likely going to be picking off a Canoptic Spider, not early anyway. So that's why that is in the list. I did actually take out something to put this in. I think it was... don't worry about it. On to the next one. This is probably the shock of the list. It's 6 Canoptic Wraiths. Now they don't interact fully with the detachment rule because they're not mounted, they're not a vehicle. I understand that. They're still going to get the +1 if they're targeting units within objectives, which is still good. That's kind of what I want them for. They're going to be led, of course, by the Technomancer that we mentioned earlier for the 5+ Funo pain save alongside their 4+ invulnerable save. They're extremely tough to shift. Now the reason I've included them in my list is I found that this detachment, it can remove enemy units off of objectives with ease, with absolute ease. However, we struggle to hold those objectives. We don't tend to stick around because, well, it's the units that we bring within this detachment. You're either going with like your mounted units that are mainly shooty, well they're all pretty much shooty, aren't they? So once they get within engagement range of enemy units on an objective, we tend to lose the fight and go down. Or we've got single model units, you know, your Doomsday Arcs, your Trike Stalkers, Annihilation Barges and so on. They've got a nice bit of OC, but they can be out OC'd by just a few troop models. You get 3 Orc Boys on there and you've been out OC'd by 3 cheap models. So we tend to not hold the objectives that well. Now the best holders in my opinion are Wraiths. I mean, of course you've got Warriors and stuff, but I think Wraiths, because they do the work, they're resilient, they're tough, they're quick, they can do mortal wounds, fight, shoot, 4+ invulnerable save, 5+ foot and pain save on top. Yes, your opponent can pick off the Technomancer with Epic Challenge or with Precision. We know that. That's always been the case. But I've had not a lot of luck, but yeah, I suppose it is luck in a way. They've just done really well for me, and I always select them. They're just as important as hex marks, in my opinion, for my list building. Now, speaking of the stratagems, I would use the Merciless Reclamation stratagem on these guys, which is the one where you can, in the shooting phase or fight phase, if you're using them, if you're fighting on an enemy unit that's on an objective, you basically get a +1 to the wound roll. It is 2 CP, but if you've got a +1 to the hit roll and then you're using your Vicious Claws, that's going to be a +1 to wound. You're likely wiping units off, or at least doing a lot of damage to their OC. Don't know if I actually mentioned, I would be taking them with the Vicious Claws and the Particle Beamers. That should have been mentioned earlier on, so we can be shooting those Particle Beamers within engagement range as well for extra added damage output. But yeah, that's the stratagem I would use with these guys, I think. Okay, next on to the next unit within this list is a Doomsday Arc, 190 points. In fact, skip that, we've got 3 Doomsday Arcs, there's no point wasting your time. 3 Doomsday Arcs, 190 per Doomsday Arc. They are going to be flanking alongside the Command Barge, so they're going to be re-rolling 1s to hit, re-rolling 1s to wound. They've got the heavy keyword, so they hit on 2s, but you want to be probably advancing them because we've got Assault. We will lose Devastating Wounds, but with the current terrain rules, line of sight is much more important than getting Devastating Wounds, in my opinion. There's no point not shooting at all, whereas you can advance, get line of sight, and yeah, it's much more better. It's better to do that. The damage output for 3 of these guys when you've got all those rerolls and +1s is insane. They're really good, really strong. Probably the bulk of your list. Now they are blast weapons, of course, so they are potentially going to get tagged, but you can fire blast out of engagement range, just not into engagement range. Now this is where the toss-up happens when you've got like the Silent King and 2 Doomsday Arcs, or the Command Barge with 3. The Silent King has his advantages. Like I said earlier, I prefer the Command Barge with 3. Now stratagem-wise, I think the Dimensional Tunnel might be worthy to use on one of these arcs to go through terrain features. And the reason for using the Dimensional Tunnel stratagem would be, well, what I found is moving 3 Doomsday Arcs around with a Command Barge is quite a large footprint, especially if you want line of sight on maybe one particular model just to delete it. So getting it from 3 different avenues is not the easiest thing to do, especially with the terrain features that we've got in 10th edition. So this could come in handy just to help your movement a little bit more, get you into the right location without having to go around, not only around your Doomsday Arcs, but around these certain terrain features and ruins and stuff. Just go straight through the ruin, over the top, and back into line of sight. Next on the list, we've got 6 Locust Destroyers. Not the heavy variant, just the little ones. I've gone with 6 there. Of course, going to be led by that Locust Lord with the critical hit rolls of a 5+ with their Gauss weapons. So 18 shots, a third of those will be lethal. On average, of course. Everything's averages with me. Ideally, you're going to be hitting on 2s against enemy units on objectives because of the detachment rule, and you're re-rolling 1s because of their ability, if they're the closest and that. So anything on an objective should get removed. It really should get removed. Don't forget we've got a -1 to the damage for our damage. And yeah, that means damage 2 attacking our Locust Destroyers becomes damage 1, which means they need 3 just to remove a model. Damage 3 isn't enough anymore because that becomes damage 2, so they need 2 to go through, which would have been 6 damage just to kill one model. Do you know what I mean? That's like quite a lot of overkill just to kill a single model. That enhancement is really strong on this unit. Stratagem wise, what we got? Unyielding Forms is the one I picked out for this one. A -1 to wound roll for your opponent if their strength is higher than our toughness of 6, isn't it? Why can't I remember that? Yeah, I'm sure it's 6. It is 6, isn't it? Yeah, of course it's 6. So a -1 to wound roll adds a little bit more resiliency to their already resilient unit with all those abilities and enhancements, and even reanimation protocols is going to help, isn't it? So that's where I would save that. It is 2 CP though, quite expensive, but maybe it happens and maybe you do need it. Next unit, we have got 5-man Lich Guard squad. 5-man unit of Lich Guard with the swords and shields, and they're simply going to be joining Imitate the Stormlord. Give him a bit more, you know, keep him alive, because we need that CP farm up and running as long as we can, and the 4+ Invulnerable Sage is going to help massively. Now they're likely going to be holding the home objective point because everything else is either quick or it's going to be advancing up because their vehicles are mounted and whatnot. We need something to stay back. They're also going to act as an anti-deep strike for a home deployment zone as well. Keep them out of line of sight, but spread them as much as you can, as long as they're out of sight of course, just to be an anti-deep strike unit. Then we come on to another scoring unit. We've got, well, a few scoring units coming up now. 80 points for 3 Ophidian Destroyers. Start them on the battlefield, out of line of sight, and then they can be picked up in turn 1 if you did go second. End of your opponent's turn, of course, you can pick them up with their Tunneling Horrors ability. Now, like the Hexmark Destroyers, or Hexmark Destroyer in this list, there'll be a secondary objective point scoring kind of unit with the ability to go back into reserves, which is very useful because late game I find they score a lot of points, especially if you go second. You can pop them out turn 5 because they've gone back into reserves, so they're not destroyed in reserves. You pop them out onto an objective because you score at the end of turn 5 if you go second, and you can start to steal a lot of late game points if you want to do it that way. They've not got Lone Up of course, but they can fight. They're in melee, and they've got the access to Devastating Wounds for a single phase with the Plasma Sight as well. So an 80-point model, well 80-point unit, which can also score. Now, we've got some more scoring units. We've got 2 units of Tomb Blades, 3-man units, so totaling 150 points there. Particle Beamers and Shadow Looms is what I've gone for. Now, those Particle Beamers, of course, have Devastating Wounds, will be handy for taking out the smaller stuff, and Shadow Looms is stealth, so -1 to hit at range is nice. But the reason why you take Tomb Blades is, first of all, they're rapid. They are rapid. You can scout them. They've got scout as well, 9 inches of scout. They can move 12 inches. You advance them up to 6 inches. Then you've got the ability where you can move after shooting, which is a further 6 inches. So you've got a max potential there of 33 inches when you're including scout. So turn 1, 33 inches. If everything goes smoothly, you get a 6 for your advance roll, and nothing's in your way. That's a max potential. Now, you can get the distant secondary objectives nice and early, like behind enemy lines, but the ones that require an action are not so straightforward, which is why I've got a Hexmark in the list. They're slightly more problematic because you can't advance and do an action, and you can't shoot and do an action. So you've lost your advance move, which is up to 6 inches. You're not able to shoot, so therefore you're not going to unlock your own ability to move another 6 inches after shooting. So you've lost a potential of 12 inches of movement just there alone. So the max potential is 21 inches, again including scout. That's if you want to do an action. Usually 21 inches is not going to get you established locust turn 1. It can do in some games. It depends on the deployment map and how far away your deployment zones are. But there will be other objectives where actions are required that are not as far out. They're cheap, they score, they can shoot decent as well with Devastating Wounds on top. And stratagem wise, I've picked out Chrono Shift. This is for vehicles or mounted unit. They're of course mounted, and instead of rolling for the advanced roll, you just get a straight 6 to your advanced roll. For 1 CP, that will give you a definite 33 inches in turn 1, requiring that you're not doing an action, of course. Then we come on to the last unit within this list, and it's a Triumph Stalker. 110 points with the Heat Ray. That's the final entry here. They've also got Scout. It's only, I think it's 8 inches, not 9 inches like the Tomb Blades. They're helping to remove cover for other units, like maybe your Locust Destroyers potentially. They're quick. They're quite tanky for the points cost. They're not super tanky, but they're tanky enough. They've got a 4+ invulnerable save, which is enough really. Throw it out into no man's land nice and early, get some early points, and force your opponent to have to deal with it, because it's going to keep scoring otherwise. You could opt to use the Overwatch stratagem with the Torrent weapon on the smaller stuff maybe, but you've also got the Melter side of the weapon as well for the slightly larger stuff. And there is one more stratagem that I haven't yet done, and I've saved it for, can't find it, there it is. I've saved it for the Triumph Stalker. It's the reactive reposition stratagem. So if you are targeted in the shooting phase, you get to move d6 inches. Now I think this just assists by getting it closer into the no man's land, or maybe even blocks certain charge moves for your opponent to do. So I would use it there, but there's lots of other places you could use this stratagem, but I thought that might be a decent one. So that is the full list for you on the right hand side of the screen. 1,995 points, we have 5 points spare. That's everything in a nutshell. What would you change? And let me know why down in the comments down below. Guys, as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.